Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Trent. This is Rams Talk. Thanks for watching. It's good to be back. Thanks for checking in, making sure I wasn't dead. I'm still alive. I'm just on the other side of the world. I moved, had a lot of crazy stuff going on, but tonight is Saints and Rams, so I had to come back and create some content because I've been thinking about this a lot, and this is my outlet. And anyways, really great. Thank you for checking in on me, everyone. AA, Goop, Mike Jackson, Lurch Nest Monster, all you guys. Really appreciate it. So I just started a new channel on Instagram called LA Rams Talk. On Twitter, I have Real LA Rams Talk, but on Instagram, it's LA Rams Talk. And I feel like that'll be a good channel for me to do some quick hits. I can be on there more often, post more, and react more to your comments there. So between stories and videos and things like that. So find me on Instagram. And yeah, anyways, let's get into it. So today's Saints versus Rams game, I usually like to have lots of data and Pro Football Focus stuff, but there's only been one game, sample size is low. So I'm just gonna go with general thoughts. Rams own the series, 42 games, 34 games. This is a classic NFC West showdown between old rivals. And, we all know about the Saints and, all the crybabies that, just honestly, to me, the Niners will always be my least favorite team, and then probably the Seahawks in terms of rivalry. The Saints are getting there just with just grow up. Grow up. Do you think I care about that pass interference call? Do you think any Rams fan cares about that? No, you don't care. You guys are just, it's old, it's over, it's done. No one wants to hear you crying about it, right? No one does. Did you care when Rams fans were upset about the regular season game last year when the Rams got gypped on that, the missed spot of the call and the fake field goal? Did you care about that? Turn the tide of the game. No, you didn't care. Did you care about all the penalties that weren't called against the Rams last year in the playoffs? Did you care about the face masks that weren't called, or the time running out that wasn't called? Did you care about any of that? No, you didn't. So if you're gonna sit here and cry and leave a comment on my feed and you're crying, I'm not gonna reply to you, okay? Let's just play some football. Let's look forward. Let's live life, okay? Okay, okay, enough of that. Anyways, so last year, the two games that the Rams played against the Saints were two completely different games, both in New Orleans, but in terms of the style, in terms of the offensive output and the final score and, personnel, it was two completely different games. In the first game, Goff threw for almost 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, an interception. Gurley ran for 68 yards and a touchdown. But the Rams only had 92. The consistent thing about both games is the Rams' rushing attack did not reach 100 yards. In the first game, it was 92 total yards, and in the second game, it was 77 total rushing yards. So if you're asking me what needs to change in this, and it's the Rams' rushing attack needs to pass the 100-yard mark. And it's not so much Todd Gurley needs to pass the yard mark, but Todd Gurley, Malcom Brown need to combine for over 100 yards. And that's going to be huge because that is, when you run the ball well, it opens the play action, and the Rams love the play action. So, but it's easier said than done because the Saints linebackers are really stout against the run. They were stout against the run last year. Their 2 defensive tackles, well, they lost one that still isn't back, Sheldon Rankins, but they got Onyemata back today. For today's game, he was suspended, and they picked up Malcom Brown in the offseason. And so we'll see how those guys do. However, they did give up 180 yards to the Texans, and the Texans have a far worse offensive line than the Rams, and they also have less than stellar running backs with Duke Johnson and Carlos Hyde. So I look for the Rams to, with Gurley and Brown and a better offensive line, playing outside of the dome, I look for them to have put up at least 100 yards. I feel like this will be a different game in that regard, as the Rams' rushing attack will thrive. So yeah, and there's that. Also in those games, the 2 games last year, both of them, Aaron Donald did not have a sack. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't have a sack in this game as well. The Saints offensive line is really good. Last year they had 4 of their 5 guys make the Pro Bowl. Granted, Max Unger, their center, is no longer with the team. He retired, so they drafted Eric McCoy out of Texas A&M. That's a guy who I thought the Rams would take, but he seems to be pretty good, but he's not Max Unger. So, they're kind of a little less than they were last year. They're still good. And Aaron Donald will still have a tough time. He'll still be double teamed. I expect him to be lined over Eric McCoy a lot of the game, but they'll help him with another 1 or 2 other players, offensive lineman or a tight end to chip, a running back to chip in on Aaron Donald. So that, coupled with the fact that Drew Brees gets the ball out very quickly, so he gets a lot of protection from the offensive line, and he also gets rid of the ball very quickly. So you're not really going to sack him often, unless you're Dante Fowler in the NFC West Championship game in overtime. That was a nice hit right there. But I feel like Dante Fowler is going to play well, and I feel like he's going to play well all year as long as other teams put 2 to 3 guys on Aaron Donald, like against Carolina. Fowler got home with 2 sacks. It was a beautiful stunt he did when they were double teaming AD. So if AD didn't get any sacks, I wouldn't be surprised. But as long as the Rams can just pressure and force Drew Brees a little bit off of his spot, hurry his throws even a little bit, that's all you can really ask for. Both games are such a contrast in terms of who did well and who didn't. Or who did well in one game and then did terrible the next game. So in the first game, Kamara had 116 all-purpose yards and 3 touchdowns. In the second game, he had, he almost had the same, but there weren't any explosive plays. So Cory Littleton was shadowing him in the playoffs, and he had 96 yards receiving, but none of them, they all were like 8 or 9 yard gains, which is, that's a solid pickup. But they weren't the 15, 20, 25, 30 yard bursts that Kamara can pull off so quickly. So I think if you just kind of hold Kamara to those kind of plays and not the big strikes, that'll be the key. But they played against Kamara 3 times and he's ripped them every time. The Rams' run defense, I don't have a lot of faith in that right now. This is not the run defense that showed up in the playoffs. So Kamara is going to be a tough task to contain or to limit in any way. The other guy, though, that I'm really curious to see how that transpires and how that works out is Mike Thomas. Mike Thomas, the first game, 211 yards, but he's matched up on Marcus Peters, no Aqib Talib. Then the second game, Wade Phillips schemes it up. He only has 34, 36 receiving yards. So he won't get 211. He won't get 36, right? He'll make some plays, but hopefully they're, third down, Mike Thomas. That being said, I can see a little Jared Cook action in this. Jared Cook, thanks for dropping all those touchdowns as a Ram, but thank you for dropping 180 on us last year as a Raider. I feel like Jared Cook's going to have a sneaky game against the Rams, just because that's how things usually work out. Ted Ginn Jr. seems to be back at full strength, so he had over 100 yards against the Texans, so that's going to be another sneaky kind of deal with Ted Ginn Jr. But Mike Thomas, Alvin Kamara are the engines that make that offense run, and so they need to figure that out in some way. In terms of the Rams offense, I feel like Jared Goff really needs to knock the rust off from the first game. It was evident that they didn't get any reps in the preseason. They were working some things out, so he needs to get into more of a rhythm. To me, there were 2 main factors going into the season, just in general, that I had questioned about. One of them was, what is Jared Goff going to do? Because I feel like there's, he, against the best teams with great defenses, he didn't look good. and great quarterbacks figure it out some way against the great teams and great defenses. And no quarterback does well with pressure up the middle, but some do better than others. So how does Jared Goff really kind of take that step? He did well against the Saints in the playoffs last year in those final drives where he was getting hit and he was just kind of slinging it out to Higbee on one of those. So I believe he has it, but let's just hope that it's starting to already click. So Jared Goff, to me, the other thing that's very interesting is, what does Sean McVay do after, when you look at the games that they struggled in last year, and the Patriots and the Eagles and the Bears? What do you do when you need to evolve? You need to work on your deficiencies and how other teams with good defenses played against you. And what do? You diversify your offensive playbook. That's what you do. And quite telling, this is going to be something I'm tracking all year, is what the Rams did in the first game against Carolina in terms of their personnel groupings. So as you know, last year they played in 11 personnel 90+% of the time. And what that means is one running back, one tight end, 3 receivers. They basically said our personnel in this formation are better than your defensive personnel, and we'll beat you. Because you have to have 3 cornerbacks on the field, and someone's got to account for the tight end and someone's got to account for the running back. So that's what they did with great success. But in the first game against the Carolina Panthers, they did that only a little over 70% of the time. And out of the 349 yards that they gained as an offense, they were quite successful in 11 personnel groupings. So they got 302 yards by running 11 personnel. The next biggest percentage of a personnel grouping was the 10 personnel grouping, and that is a running back, no tight end, 4 wide receivers. They ran that 16% of the time and only got 22 yards. So that was not as successful. Maybe they're just ironing out the kinks. Who knows? Small sample size. And then they ran 7% of the time. They ran 12 personnel, which is 1 running back, 2 tight ends, and they got 24 yards on that. So they have already diversified, ran different personnel groupings for more percentages of the game than they did at any real point last year. Maybe with the exception of when C.J. Anderson was in camp and on the team and playing. So this will give Sean Payton and other coaches something to think about. It also gives the Rams some experience running another formation. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see how it manifests in this game and over the course of the season. And I'll be keeping you guys apprised of that. So last thing, or a couple last things I want to talk about are the matchups, the key matchups. So I feel that there are 4 key matchups in this game. One of them is going to be Kamara and Littleton. Like I mentioned earlier, Littleton did a great job sideline to sideline. He's right now, after one game, I know it's one game, he's the number 1 rated linebacker in Pro Football Focus, mainly because of his interception, his fumble, and his 14 tackles last week. I mean, Littleton is legit. He's not just kind of a no-name guy that rose through the ranks. He's a legit NFL top-tier linebacker. He's not like the beefy Luke Kuechly run stopper, but he's all over the map, and he's a playmaker. So Littleton versus Kamara is going to be huge. John Johnson versus Jared Cook is going to be huge. Cooper Kupp versus P.J. Williams is going to be huge. P.J. Williams is the lesser of the 3 cornerbacks that they have. He was burned a lot last year. Then he played pretty well. So he's been up and down, but I feel Cooper Kupp is, him and he's so simpatico with Jared Goff. So I feel like Cooper Kupp's going to have a big game. And then the other matchup is going to be Peters versus Michael Thomas. So we'll see, how Wade Phillips schemes that up to provide some cover for Marcus Peters on Michael Thomas in this game. So those are huge matchups. Now, the last thing I want to get to is not so much of a Rams-Saints deal, but it's more of a Todd Gurley deal. And everyone last year, or in the last game on Twitter, Rams Twitter was just chicken little, sky is falling. Todd Gurley, oh my gosh, the knee, you can't tell me the knee is not an issue. Yeah, I can. I can tell you right now the knee's not an issue. I mean, over time, the knee will be an issue, but right now it's not. Last year, at certain times it was, but now it's not. Did you see him run? He looked good. He looked explosive. He didn't look limited in any way. He had just under 100 yards. He ran for 60-something yards in the fourth quarter. I would say there's nothing wrong with his knee right now. But you have to look at this from a macro view, not a play-by-play view, but 64 quarters during a regular season, maybe 76 quarters if they make it to the Super Bowl. So just because in one quarter Malcolm Brown runs for the ball 5 times more than Todd Gurley and scores a touchdown, that doesn't mean anything, right? You need to look at his workload over 64 quarters. I mean, maybe less than that if they clinch and they don't have to play, they can rest the starters, but this is a marathon. And then I would rather have Todd Gurley running well in the fourth quarter to secure a win than running 10 times in the first quarter of the first game. So think of it as a longer timeline with with 64 different dots, and his workload is going to be like this, but as long as it equals this, what we want it to equal at the end, as long as it makes sense in the game. I mean, why would you burn him out? Why would you burn him out? We need him for several more years. So, I don't think we're going to see the Todd Gurley of old where, like last year in fantasy, he had like 315 points for me. That's insane. He's not going to get that this year. That's okay. I'll take that. But Malcolm Brown is also very good. I think a lot of people Rams fans get it, but I don't think a lot of people get it, how good Malcolm Brown is. People who thought John Kelly was better than Malcolm Brown last year, I don't know what to say about that. But Malcolm Brown, Todd Gurley, then you throw in some Darrell Henderson into the mix, and you just really want to give the opponents as many looks. You want to keep guys fresh for the whole season, for multiple years. It's big picture, right? No one wins in this league with little picture. No one goes into a job interview and says, hey, I'm only focused on the first day, not what I can do for this company over a year and 5 years. So let's all just chill on Todd Gurley's knee. And as long as he's running in every game this year, that's great. That's what we want. Anyways, enough of that. So pretty much done here. Thanks again, everyone, for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Find me on Instagram, LA Rams Talk, Twitter, Real LA Rams Talk. I'm really jazzed about today's game. It's time for me. So thanks for watching. I missed you guys and girls. And as always, go Rams.